The ceiling is where I saw it first, and I need you to understand that this isn't the kind of story where I was half asleep, or drunk, or imagining things. I've read those stories too, the ones where the narrator wakes up in a panic and discovers some explainable phenomenon that turns out to be nothing more than a trick of the light or a bad dream or too much whiskey the night before. This isn't that. This is something else entirely, something that started on a Tuesday morning in May when I opened my eyes to the familiar sight of that water stain near my bedroom light fixture. The one my landlord has been promising to fix for the entire 3 years I've lived in this apartment on Government Street in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Except that morning, the stain wasn't what caught my attention. What caught my attention were the scratches, 6 words carved into the paint with what I can only describe as fingernails, running vertically down the ceiling, right above where my pillow sits when I sleep. The marks weren't deep, but they were deliberate and unsettling. The kind of marks you make when you have something urgent to communicate and you need someone to hear it, no matter what it takes. I know you're awake. Those were the words. I know you're awake. They glowed faintly in the early light, filtering through my blinds, catching the dust particles that perpetually hang in the air of this old building. And I remember the surreal quality of that moment, the way the scratches seemed almost alive, pulsing gently with each breath I took in that space between sleep and waking, where dreams and reality haven't quite decided who gets to run the show. I've lived alone in this apartment since my divorce, since Susan took the dog and half the furniture and left me with nothing but the essentials and a silence that followed me from room to room. I work as a claims adjuster for an insurance company downtown, spending my days evaluating car accidents and water-damaged homes and explaining to people why their policies don't cover what they think they cover. I'm not the kind of person who hallucinates or loses time or wakes up screaming in the night. I'm the guy who double-checks the locks before bed, who keeps a baseball bat by the door just in case, who knows every creak and groan this building makes, because I've learned to read them like a language. But that morning, lying in bed staring at those 6 words, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Genuine, primal terror. My name is Travis Boone, and I need you to know who I am before I tell you what happened. Because who I am matters for understanding why this story is real, and why it's not just the ravings of someone who's lost touch with what's actually happening around them. I grew up in Baton Rouge, attended Catholic High, went to LSU for 2 years before the money ran out, got married at 24, divorced at 31, and have spent the years since then rebuilding a life that feels less like living and more like going through the motions. I'm 36 years old. I have brown hair that's starting to thin at the temples, and I wear glasses that I only put on when I'm driving or watching television, because everything at arm's length is still clear enough to read without them. My morning routine is something I've clung to in the years since the divorce, because routines are what keep us sane when everything else falls apart. Coffee from the drip pot my ex-wife bought as a wedding gift. 2 eggs scrambled in the cast iron skillet she left behind, and a shower that I take at exactly 7:15 because the water pressure in this old building is better before the other tenants start their day. I mention this because that morning, none of that routine happened. Instead, I lay there for what must have been an hour, maybe more, staring at those words while my heart tried to beat its way out of my chest, and my mind scrambled to come up with any explanation that didn't involve another person standing over me while I slept. I've learned to sleep through most things in this building, the bass from the car stereo that parks outside my window every weekend, the couple fighting in 4B, the pipes that knock like someone's at my front door at 3 in the morning. But those scratches couldn't have been there before I went to sleep. I'm certain of that because I look at that spot every night. If someone had stood at the foot of my bed and carved those words into my ceiling while I lay there unconscious, I would have felt it. I would have woken up. I would have done something. When I finally got out of bed that morning, my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I stood on my tiptoes and reached up to touch the scratches, and the paint crumbled under my fingers like it had been waiting for confirmation that this was real. The property manager didn't answer her phone that morning, so I called the police non-emergency line and reported what I found. And the officer who came out was a young woman with tired eyes and a notepad full of questions that she clearly didn't believe would lead anywhere useful. She asked me if I had any enemies, if there was anyone who might want to scare me or play a prank. And when I told her I couldn't think of anyone, she asked if I might have been drinking the night before or taking any medications that could cause vivid dreams or hallucinations. I hadn't been drinking. I haven't had more than a beer or two since the divorce, and I definitely hadn't had anything that night. Just the usual glass of water before bed, and the same melatonin supplement I take every night to help me fall asleep in this silent apartment where silence has become both a comfort and a curse. She shined her flashlight at the ceiling and said the scratches looked recent, which I already knew, and she said she would file a report, but that without evidence of a break-in or witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. Maybe it was kids, she said, in that tone of voice that people use when they're trying to offer an explanation that sounds plausible, even though it isn't. Kids. Vandalizing my apartment at 3 a.m. while I slept in the next room, leaving a message that felt less like graffiti and more like a direct threat. After she left, I locked the door behind her and stood in my living room looking at the bedroom doorway, like it led to somewhere I wasn't ready to go. I spent that day at work pretending to focus on a claim about a flooded basement in Prairieville. But I couldn't stop thinking about those words. I know you're awake. Not, I see you, or I'm watching you. The emphasis was on the word awake, like the act of being conscious, of being present in your own body, was somehow relevant to whatever was happening. That night, I didn't sleep in my bedroom. I moved to the couch, positioning myself so I could see both the front door and the hallway, and I kept every light on with the baseball bat across my lap. I sat there until 4 a.m, waiting for something that never came, and when exhaustion finally pulled me under, I dreamed of ceilings covered in words and figures standing in corners, just out of sight. I considered not sleeping in my bedroom at all, but exhaustion has a way of making decisions for you that your conscious mind wouldn't choose. And by Thursday night, I was so tired that my hands were shaking, and my thoughts kept sliding off the edges of things like water off a waxed surface. I told myself I would be more careful this time, that I would notice if anyone came near me, that I would feel the presence of another human being standing too close to where I lay. I set 3 alarms around the room, the loudest ones I could find, positioned so that if I started to drift into sleep, the jarring sound would pull me back into consciousness. I lay in bed with my eyes open, watching the ceiling where those words had been, and I noticed that in the evening light, the scratches were almost invisible, just faint lines in the paint that could have been anything, could have been nothing, could have been my mind inventing patterns in the randomness of an aging ceiling. By midnight, I had been awake for nearly 20 hours, and I was so tired that I could feel my body starting to shut down despite my best efforts to stay alert. The last thing I remember before sleep took me was thinking that I should have painted over the scratches, should have erased the evidence before it erased my peace of mind entirely. When I woke up, it was because of the cold, not the temperature, but a cold that seemed to come from inside me. a chill that started in my chest and spread outward to my extremities until my teeth were chattering and my sheets were damp with sweat. And on the ceiling, in the same spot but different this time, new scratches had appeared while I slept. "You didn't wake up." That's what they said, carved deep into the paint, deep enough that I could see the white of the drywall underneath. And the letters were jagged in a way that suggested whoever made them had been angry or desperate or both. I didn't call the police the second time. What would I say? That words keep appearing on my ceiling? That I have a ghost or a stalker or something worse that operates in the space between sleep and waking? I spent that day buying supplies, making myself feel like I was doing something proactive instead of just waiting for the next morning to reveal whatever new message had been carved into my life. I bought a security camera from the electronics store on Florida Boulevard, one with good reviews and night vision and the ability to send alerts to my phone whenever it detected movement. I bought a new lock for my bedroom door, a deadbolt that I installed myself, and I positioned the camera so that it would record everything in the bedroom, every angle, every moment of the night. I told myself that this time would be different, that I would finally catch whoever was doing this, that the footage would reveal the truth, and I would have something concrete to take to the police. I went through the ritual of the alarms again, the positioning, the fierce determination to stay awake until morning. But here's the thing about being tired. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care what you want or what you need to do. It just takes over. And the next thing I knew, it was morning again, my face pressed into my pillow, my neck aching from the angle I had fallen asleep in. When I checked the camera's memory card, it was full of nothing but me, tossing and turning, and at some point around 3 a.m, a stretch of darkness where the camera should have captured something but didn't. The security footage showed me going to bed at 10:47. It showed me setting the alarms. It showed me lying awake for approximately 2 hours, fighting sleep like it was an enemy trying to invade my fortress. And then the screen went black for exactly 7 minutes. Not static, not snow, just pure black, like someone had unplugged the camera or covered the lens. When the footage came back on, I was asleep, really asleep, and my apartment was empty and quiet except for the new scratches that had appeared on the ceiling, while that 7-minute gap swallowed up all the evidence of what had happened. I've started noticing things in my peripheral vision, things I can never quite focus on directly, but that are there nonetheless, lurking in the spaces between what I see clearly and what I feel rather than observe. On Thursday, I was microwaving my lunch at work, leftover chili from the pot I made last weekend. And I turned around, and for just a second, I thought I saw a figure standing by the window. Someone in dark clothes with their back to me. And when I blinked, it was gone, like it had never been there at all. I told myself it was a reflection, the angle of the light through the break room windows, my eyes playing tricks because I hadn't been sleeping well. But then that night, I was brushing my teeth, looking at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, and I saw it again, a shape behind me, closer this time, like someone was standing a foot away from my back with their breath on my neck. I spun around with my toothbrush raised like it was a weapon, and there was nothing there. Just the empty bathroom and the dripping faucet, and my own face staring back at me with an expression I didn't recognize. I haven't been eating well. The thought of food makes me nauseous now, and I've lost 6 pounds in the past 2 weeks, which my coworkers have started to notice and comment on in that way that people do when they're worried but don't want to say it directly. You look tired, Travis. Are you feeling okay? You should take a vacation. A vacation. Like, the problem is that I need to rest more, when the truth is that I'm afraid to rest at all. Afraid to close my eyes because I don't know what's happening when I do. And every morning the scratches are there to tell me that whatever it is, it knows things about me that I don't know about myself. The fourth morning, the scratches said something new, and this time the words weren't trying to scare me, but rather pointing me somewhere I didn't want to go, somewhere I had spent 17 years avoiding. Ask about your father. That's all. 6 words that hit me like a punch to the chest, because I don't talk about my father, haven't talked about him since I was 19 years old. And there is a particular kind of pain that comes from mentioning the dead that makes you feel like you're resurrecting something that should stay buried. There is no way that anyone in Baton Rouge should know enough about me to even think about asking that question. My father died when I was 17, a car accident on Highway 61 that the papers called a single vehicle incident, which is what they call it when a car goes off the road and the driver is the only one who dies, and there are no witnesses to say otherwise. He was a good driver, my father, the kind of careful and patient driver who never exceeded the speed limit and always used his turn signals. The accident never made sense to me, but I was 17 and grieving, and I didn't ask the questions that I should have asked because I was too busy trying to hold my family together while my mother fell apart and my sister moved away to Atlanta. I called my mother that day for the first time in months, and I asked her about the accident, and she got quiet in that way that mothers get when they know something they don't want to tell you. She said the police report said he fell asleep, that there were no signs of foul play, that he had been driving home from a late shift at the refinery, and sometimes people fall asleep, and sometimes they don't wake up. But she said something else too, something that made me drop the phone and sit down on my kitchen floor because my legs stopped working. She said that the week before he died, my father had started acting strange, checking the locks more than usual, sleeping with the lights on, telling her that he felt like someone was watching him. I started going through my father's things that same day, the boxes I had stored in my closet and never opened, because opening them would mean admitting that he was gone. His old journals were in the bottom box, the ones he kept in his toolbox at work, written in the small, careful handwriting that I remembered from birthday cards and permission slips and notes passed across the breakfast table. I sat on my living room floor reading through his handwriting, page after page of notes about his job and his hobbies and his life, normal things, mundane things. And then I got to the entries from the month before he died, and everything I thought I knew about my father's death, about my own life, began to crumble around me. "Someone is in the house," he wrote on October 12th, in handwriting that was shakier than the entries before it. "I hear footsteps when no one else is home. Checked every room, nothing, but I know someone was here." October 15th. The scratches appeared again. Same words. "I haven't slept in 3 days. Susan thinks I'm losing my mind. Maybe I am, but the words are real." October 19th. "I know you're awake. That's what it says. Every morning. I painted over it, and it came back. The same words. How is this happening?" October 23rd. "I can't do this anymore. I can't sleep. I can't think. Whoever is doing this, they're trying to break me." October 31st, the last entry. "I'm going to drive tonight. Maybe if I'm moving, I'll feel safe. Maybe if I'm somewhere else, the words will stop. I can't keep living like this. I'm so tired. I'm so tired." 3 days later, he went off the road on Highway 61. They said he fell asleep. They said it was an accident, but I don't think it was an accident anymore. I think my father was being terrorized by something that no one believed in, something that wore him down until he made a mistake on a dark road because he was too exhausted to stay alert. And now I think that same thing has found me, has been finding me for months or maybe years, waiting for the right moment to start writing its messages on my ceiling. The night after I finished reading his journals, I didn't try to stay awake. I didn't set alarms or position myself to catch whoever was responsible or turn on all the lights in a desperate attempt to keep the darkness at bay. Instead, I lay in bed with the lights off and the camera running, and I waited for the cold to come, for the darkness to fall, for whatever had been standing in my peripheral vision to finally step out of the shadows and show itself, because I understood now that fighting was pointless, that my father had tried fighting and it had killed him. I wasn't afraid anymore, or at least I wasn't afraid in the way I had been afraid before. I was afraid like my father must have been afraid at the end, that specific kind of terror that comes from knowing that something is wrong and that no one will believe you and that you're going to have to face it alone. The cold came around 2 a.m, that same spreading chill that I had felt every morning before. But this time, I didn't open my eyes. I kept them closed, and I felt it. The presence of something in the room with me, something standing at the foot of my bed with a weight that pressed down on the mattress like a person sitting where no person should be sitting. "I know you're awake," I whispered before it could speak, and I heard it shift, heard the floorboards creak under a weight that should have been too heavy for any person to carry. I kept saying it over and over, and each repetition felt like a ward against something I couldn't see. Then I felt the mattress dip as something sat on the edge of my bed, and then I felt cold fingers touch my cheek, in a touch that felt more intimate than any touch I had ever experienced before. And then I opened my eyes and I saw it. And it was looking at me with eyes that had no whites and no irises and no pupils, but instead seemed to contain every darkness I had ever known. What I saw doesn't make sense. It had a face, but the face kept changing, cycling through features like it couldn't decide which one to wear. And in the dim light, I saw my father's face flash across it for just a moment, long enough to make me scream and short enough to make me doubt what I saw. It spoke in a voice that sounded like mine, like it had crawled into my head and was using my own vocal cords. And it said, "You're the last one." Not the first, not the only, but the last, which meant there had been others before me, stretching back through time to people whose names I would never know. "Your father tried to run," it said. "You can't run. There's nowhere to run to. There's nowhere to hide." Then it leaned in close, cold radiating off its skin like winter had taken physical form, and whispered something I won't repeat. It smiled with a mouth that had too many teeth, teeth that seemed to multiply as I watched, and said, "Sleep now. You've been awake long enough." And I did. I slept, and it felt like drowning but peaceful, the first moment of genuine rest I had felt in weeks. When I woke up, the scratches on my ceiling said just one word: "Thank you." I'm writing this because I want you to understand something. If you find scratches on your ceiling, don't ask who made them. Don't call the police. Don't try to stay awake. It's already chosen you, and the only thing left to decide is whether you're going to fight or rest. My father fought. I chose differently. I chose to sleep, and the sleeping is easy now. The scratches today say, "He's coming next." I don't know who he's referring to, but I think I know who will be reading this, lying in bed tonight, afraid to sleep. Let me save you some time. You can't stay awake forever. None of us can. And when you finally close your eyes and let the cold wash over you, You'll understand what I understand now. You'll know why I'm grateful, even though grateful is a word I never thought I'd use for something like this.